for that prompt. So we are now recording. Just to let everybody know, in the state of California, I am legally obligated to inform you that we are recording the session. So Lorna, could you let us know in chat and let everybody know where you are joining us from? And Anna, love to hear from you, and we would love to see you. So if you have the option and your bandwidth will allow it, if you could turn your cameras on, it would be for a more interactive session today. Thank you. Esther, what time do you want to start?
5 o'clock.
We are at 5:01.
5:01.
Speakers to come in. Consul General Henry Bensurto.
Conjen is in.
Oh, is he? Sorry.
Yes, he's right there. He's looking handsome and dapper as ever.
Okay. Magandang hapon. So, well, how about Sonny Le? I can't see it from where I am.
At your service.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. Yes, I think we can start.
Okay, so I am turning. My name is Wennie Conedy. I am your sort of technical producer, digital producer for today. If you have any questions or any technical issues with Zoom today, please send me a private message. Be more than happy to help you out. And welcome everybody. And let me turn it over to Esther.
Thank you so much, Wennie. Without you, we'll be lost. But good evening, everyone. My name is Esther Chavez. I am the co-chair of the Philippine American Press Club's Kapihan series, together with Rudy Asercion. Wennie Conedy and I are your hosts this evening, and Wennie is our facilitator. So before we go to the meat of our forum, here's a short message from Jojo Peralta, president of the Philippine American Press Club USA. He is also the Vice President and General Manager of Asian Journal, Northern California. Jojo, may we hear from you?
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Conjen Henry Bensurto, our guest speakers, Teresa Ferrer, Sonny Le. We want to thank you for giving us your time, and we hope this afternoon will facilitate the discussion of why the census, the 2020 census, is very important for all of us, particularly to the Philippine American community. As we all know, our minority communities are grappling for resources from the national government. And it is important that all of us are counted and our numbers do not diminish in the United States. So I hope this discussion will be very, very fruitful for all of us. And thank you for attending this Kapihan.
Thank you, Jojo. I'm still answering some questions here and how to link. So there you go. So our topic tonight is Palista na, or be counted, in the 2020 census and its importance. In the last 2010 census, out of 3.4 million Filipinos in the United States, only 70% registered, meaning 1.2 million were uncounted and unregistered. Other communities get federal funding. The Press Club thought it of importance that we reach our kababayans far and wide to let them know how important it is to be counted in the 2020 census and all census to come. Toward that objective, we have our panelists, the U.S. Census Bureau, Mr. Sonny Le and Teresa Ferrer, partnership specialists. Mayor Roland Esquivias of Hercules City, California, and Vice Mayor Juslyn Manalo of Daly City, California, to give us a perspective on their constituents and how they are encouraging them to sign up. And finally, Consul General Henry Bensurto Jr. of the Philippine Consulate in San Francisco, who will give us an insight on how Filipinos perceive the census. So due to sudden conflict of speaking schedule, we will start with Consul General Henry S. Bensurto, who was assigned to his post in 2014 until the present time. So without further ado, we'll have Consul General Bensurto.
Hi, can you hear me, Boots?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great.
Very well.
All right, great. Good to know. First, thank you very much to Boots and Jojo Peralta and the entire Philippine American Press Club for the opportunity to speak on this very important issue. I think by way to start and as a caveat, since I'm a consul general from a foreign country here in the United States, I just want to emphasize that we do respect the internal domestic environment of the United States of America, and its sovereignty and its authority to manage its own internal affairs. And therefore, it is not our intention to interfere in any way with that domestic setting of the United States. The very reason that we are putting our opinion and perspective here is essentially because of the Filipino American or the Filipino minority, as mentioned by Boots in her presentation in the United States. So it is from that context, therefore, that we are sharing the views, and hopefully we can expound as to why it is also important for us from the outsider's perspective. Although I must say that it's not entirely an outsider, because we do provide also services to our constituents here in the United States, and that is the Filipinos and the Filipino Americans alike. So from that perspective, therefore, allow me to provide some insights from the Philippine government. Let me introduce myself. I'm Henry Bensurto Jr. I'm the Consul General based here in San Francisco, but I do represent and take care of our constituents all the way to the Pacific Northwest. And by that, I wish to emphasize that our jurisdiction does not limit ourselves here in the Bay Area or the city of San Francisco, but we actually cover 9 other states, or 10 states altogether, all the way to Alaska. So we have under our jurisdiction, Alaska, California, and by that, Northern California. I share California with my southern counterpart from Los Angeles, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. So these are the 10 states that we cover. And essentially, when I mention 10 states, integral to that is the number of Filipinos that we provide services to. And altogether, based on an old number, and perhaps this is the reason why we are so interested as well in the census, because the numbers that we have, we don't feel they represent the true the reality of the number of Filipinos. But by way of perhaps introducing the idea, we have something like 1 million Filipinos spread all over these 10 states that I mentioned. In the Bay Area alone, based on the figures that we have, it's more than 500,000 that we cover. We understand that this is more or less an inaccurate figure by now. And so our interest to understand and really have a good grasp of the real number of Filipinos here in the United States. And I will explain why that is very important. At the beginning of my statement, I did mention that this is an internal matter with the United States, and we completely respect that. But be that as the main um, as a principle that we follow. We have to admit that we are interested also in the numbers, simply because of the number of Filipinos that we also serve here, and at the same time, the growing number of dual citizens who is directly under our responsibility. Later on at the end of the presentation, I will expound that it's not just the color of the passport that is important for us from the Philippine perspective, but as well as the heritage. And so this is something that we are closely monitoring as well. And it's essentially the same as in any policymakers. Knowing the numbers means allotment of resources. And so that is the primary focus that we have. Let me explain from a general context and strategic perspective why it is important for us to have a good reading of the actual numbers of Filipinos in the United States. First and foremost, we have always emphasized the special relations between the Philippines and the United States. Let me expound what we meant by that. The special relations really reflects the very personal relationship, and by personal, we are actually referring to the people themselves who have relatives back home. And so that connection makes that relationship very personal. Obviously, our historical experience, the fact that we share some democratic principles and historical perspectives, including the Corregidor and Bataan, the World War II. But beyond those historical experience, what defines that special relations between these two countries really is the fact that we have a lot of Filipinos here in the United States who are still connected and related by affinity or by blood to their relatives back home. And so that makes that relationship very personal. And this is also the very reason why the Philippine government in the past, today, and in the future will continue to make that relationship special. That said, it is therefore very important for us as we allocate resources to have a good grasp in terms of the number of Filipinos here. Aside from the Consulate General here in San Francisco, we have other consulates spread all over the United States. If you notice that the two biggest countries of foreign posting we have is the United States first and China second. So we have something like 8 foreign service posts here, from Washington, D.C. to New York, to Houston, to Chicago, to San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Honolulu. But at the same time, we also have honorary consuls that are also spread around the United States. By honorary consuls, we are referring to US citizens that we have appointed to represent the Philippines as well and its constituents. If you notice, the way we have allocated and the way we have distributed and established consulates general in the United States is primarily based on the number of Filipinos and the concentration of those Filipinos in those areas. And so when you mention Consulate General in Los Angeles, it is primarily because of the number of Filipinos as well in Southern California. It is also true in Chicago. It is also true in New York. It is also true in Houston. But we know that the number of Filipinos in the United States is growing. And so we have also proposed the establishment of more consulates. For example, in my jurisdiction, I have made recommendation for the establishment of consulate in Alaska and also in Seattle. The reason for this, one of the factors, although I must say the main factor that we have considered in the establishment of these consulates here in the United States is the number of Filipinos present. So I did mention Alaska, and I did mention Seattle, for example, as future sites for future consulates, Philippine consulates here in the United States. And the reason for that is because of the growing number of Filipinos in Alaska and also in Seattle. And so that is a primary consideration for us. Connecting that with the census, therefore, once we have a full idea of what the numbers are, then this becomes a justification for us to establish those consulates, or perhaps in other areas where we see the trend in terms of a growing Filipino population, and resources will definitely be allocated in those areas, both in terms of assistance to nationals, also in terms of assistance to the community, also in terms of outreach programs. I did mention earlier that the lack of consulates in Seattle and Alaska has prompted us to do consular outreach. But because there are some budgetary considerations, we have downgraded or somehow the number of consular outreach to these areas have diminished. But when the number, as soon as we have the number of the census, the outcome, and we see that there is a trend in terms of growth and that it is a growing population of Filipinos there, that can be used by us as a justification to allocate more resources and the establishment of consulates in those areas. It is also critical for us in terms of the staffing pattern of our consulates, because if there are more Filipinos, then obviously the organization will also have to grow commensurate to the number of Filipinos that it serves. And so that number is therefore critical for us. Finally, I think I must emphasize that in the context of what we do here in San Francisco, in terms of the Spark, Connect, Empower, the color of the passports that Filipinos hold for us is getting to be less important insofar as we are concerned. And we have now emphasized the matter of citizenship and has put more emphasis on the idea of heritage. And the reason for this is the very close connection among Filipinos and the concept of extended family among Filipinos, and also the desire of us to reach out to those who we consider, or those people who are considered to share in that heritage, which we call Filipino. And so political boundary for us is getting to be not clear, that line, because our emphasis is slowly shifting into the idea of heritage and culture as a primary consideration. This is obviously aside from the fact that we have a law on dual citizenship, so there are many Americans here who are also at the same time Filipinos, because our law allows people who have lost their citizenship to reacquire their Philippine citizenship or retain them. And so that number for us, we feel, is going to grow as we've seen that it has also grown exponentially as well. But beyond that, going back to what Spark, Connect, Empower concept is from the San Francisco Consulate General, we want to reach out as well to the young generation of Filipino Americans. I'm referring to the second, third, fourth generation, making sure that we're able to build that bridge and to make sure that we don't lose that heritage in the near future. And so for us to be able to allocate and dedicate correct resources in that respect, we must have a good estimate of that number. along those lines, since this is an initiative of the Consulate General here in San Francisco, this is an idea that we're trying to put in terms of national policy, foreign policy of the Philippine government as well, simply because that heritage is not just true here in the United States. We also have a growing Filipino population in Europe and also in the Asia Pacific. By that, I'm referring to the other ASEAN countries and Middle East as well, for those Filipinos who have decided to settle in those countries. So at the end of the day, we have to emphasize that the numbers are very important, not just for you, Filipino Americans here, but also for us, because of its direct connection in terms of allocation of resources. But more than that, for the Filipino Americans here to have a say, to have a voice in terms of policy making, the number is a very important consideration. This is true for your country here, for those Americans here, but it is also true for us in the Philippines who is very concerned also with the welfare of not just Filipino citizens, but those who share in the heritage as well. So on that point, I'd like to close by saying, by encouraging our Filipino kababayans to please participate actively in this census taking, because not only will it be critical for you to have a voice in terms of policy making, but also in terms of allocation of resources, not just from the perspective of the US government, but from a distance, the Philippine government as well. And we say that without interfering in the domestic affairs of this country. And so we have therefore, before the pandemic, partnered, for example, with the Bayanihan Equity Center and to encourage people to participate in this census making. So on that note, I'd like to again congratulate and thank Esther and Jojo and also my colleagues who are also speaking and your audience. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Consul General Henry S. Bensurto Jr. for your time. You know, you have so many speaking engagements, and thank you for being here today. And so now we move on to our Census Bureau partners. And here to introduce Mr. Sonny Le, leader of the partnership specialist, is our very own Teresa Ferrer, who is also a partnership specialist. Teresa?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Consul General, and thank you for allowing the census activity to also be in your office, because working with the Bayanihan Resource Center has been actually very valuable for us, so thank you. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Teresa Ferrer. I'm a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. Baguio born, became a U.S. citizen from my father, who's retired U.S. Navy, and then also through the San Francisco office, a dual citizen. So is my son. So I am greatly honored to be reminded on the value of the U.S. Census as it pertains to the Philippines. So let me say, for the past 30 years, I have had the honor of working for or on behalf of the Filipino community, be it as a San Mateo County Health Commissioner or founding member of Vallejo and Alice. And in that time, I have met some true to true community advocates, some of which I see have joined this session. So I understand the commitment that some of you have, that a lot of you have made for this. I have the privilege of introducing another true community advocate, Sonny Le. When I first met Sonny, his reputation preceded him. He was described to me as knowledgeable, experienced, and unflappable. One can say that He also knows where to pick a good restaurant anywhere in the Bay Area. And lucky for us, he has chosen quite a few Filipino restaurants. I can also attest that as my supervisor, I have come to know firsthand the vastness of his community reach. Sonny tells it as it is, even within the walls of the Bureau. His aim is to get everyone, and I mean everyone, counted. So at this time, I have the privilege of introducing Sonny Lay. Sonny?
You should be talking. I shouldn't be talking. I'm here to help you out.
I learned well from you. Thanks, Sonny.
Kumusta kayo? How is everybody? Wow. Emil is on the call. He may beg to differ. Emil. Emil and I have gone way back.
You're okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. See, okay. Thank you for that approval.
You're the best. You're the best.
We gone through many AAJ events, ethnic media, and we've done a lot of political debates and what do you call the gubernatorial debates up and down the coast. So wow, thank you. What can I say? Teresa has been amazing. I should be saying all those things about her, not me. I cannot do what I do without them being there with me. So basically, boy, what can I say? The census is sort of personal to me. I also came here as an immigrant, as a refugee, and also someone who wasn't counted in my first 20 years in America. In 1990 census. I wasn't counted until I became a census employee back in 2000. In fact, I left Emil and New America Media to join the census in 1995. So after I finished with Ethnic News Media, I came to work for the census. The census in America is a foundational building blocks of society of our country. It's nearly every aspect of life in America is driven by data. And in America, we often say that according to the Census Bureau, comma, how many Filipinos are in Daly City? Or according, we can go on about data and then we comma, according to the Census Bureau. So in that sense, we cannot function without census data. And there is so much at stake with the 2020 census that will end in exactly 34 days. And we have 34 days to make sure that everyone in our community will have been counted. As you can see, the not being counted is more than just a dollar and cents of not knowing where our community members are. Not being counted, that means you don't exist. Not being counted in the 2020 census amounts to being snapped out of existence. That's what it means. Americans often talk about genealogy, about what their great-great-great-grandfathers did or what they owned in the olden days. And the only way you can do that is through census information, census data. Each one of us, will be able to get our own census data, or that we can go back and look up what we did, what our great-great-grandparents did 30 years, 50, 100 years ago. So without that data, we don't know if we have been in America. So being counted in the census is more than just being documented by the government, but also you may say that this is my country as well. I belong here, I have a place here, and there should be a place for me in the record books. That's what it means. So right now, currently, there is something we call the 7 mailing, and that means that some of our neighborhoods, especially in Fremont, in Hayward, in Vallejo, and areas in San Mateo County may have received this questionnaire in the mail. And if they do, you ever get a call that I get this thing in the mail, what do I do? You need to get them counted and send it back as soon as possible. We have exactly 34 days to get ourselves counted. Next, please. Okay, this is where the Census Bureau is at the local level. We just finished what we call group quarters enumeration. These are the college dorms, the skilled nursing homes, and this is kind of interesting. It touches on the Filipino community deeply because of the number of those who either operate the skilled nursing homes or working in those places. When you work there, you live there, you have to be counted there as part of the group quarters enumeration. This is not a way that we may miss people, because I know of a lot of independently run skilled nursing homes that are small, and they may escape under the radar undetected by the Census Bureau. And that is part of the group quarters enumerations. Mobile question assistance is what Teresa and I have been doing. Basically, we get ourselves into neighborhoods and community centers, and we answer questions that people may have about the census. And this is interesting. It's related to our communities, especially Filipinos, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Koreans. A lot of us have mixed status family members. That means that some of us are citizens, some are not, living under the same roof. Because of that fear of government, we may not get not only themselves counted, but ourselves counted either. This is very crucial, that we need to know that there's no citizenship question and nobody can get access to your information. Therefore, you are safe from the law. Whether you have mixed status family members or not, they all need to be counted. And another thing that we have encountered is that the question, should I count my in-laws who are visiting from the Philippines or from Vietnam? Visiting, that means is that they came here legally on a tourist visa, but have overstayed their visit. When you overstay your visit in the US, that makes you de facto undocumented. So the Census Bureau doesn't care how you got here. If you live here, you sleep here, you should be counted. And we have another operation called non-response follow-up. We are following with housing units, households that have not been counted, and hopefully we be able to get census information from them. And it's a complicated situation right now with COVID-19. Imagine a complete stranger standing in front of you, asking you personal questions, and that may not work. And so what happened is, we have things we call, let me see, it's called a notice of visit. This is what the census workers are obligated to leave behind. And on this, it has information for you to get online to get yourself counted in Tagalog online. So this is what that we leave behind for people. And this is very important. We need to remind our communities right now, you don't have to answer the census workers standing in front of you. You can ask for information of how to get yourselves counted online or by phone in Tagalog. Next, please. Okay, so this is what Teresa and I have been doing. Basically, we work with our enumerators. We go to farmers markets, we could go to supermarkets and all the locations, and with enumerators. And as you can see, an enumerator with a face shield, with an iPad, and actually it's amazing they can count a person under 3 minutes. It's very fast, just 9 questions, very simple. If you have more than 2 persons in the house, it may take longer, but in general, it shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. Next, please. Okay, so this is what the census workers do when they visit your home. They ask only the questions that are on the questionnaire. They cannot go off script, and they're using an iPhone 8 to count you. And a lot of people, I got a lot of calls today, say, how can you do anything on this thing? And so they suspected our workers weren't real. So they called, it's like, I thought you have a laptop or something, you have paper and pencil, fill it in. So they thought it was fake, but actually this is what they do, iPhone 8. And another thing is that they should have a mask, and they should have a bag like this, and it should have badges as well. They should have a badge. So they should have all those things in place. And Teresa and I can send you more of how to identify a census workers later on. Next, please. Okay, so this is what a typical census worker should look like. she or he should have the badge, the bag, the mask, the phone, and all the accessories. Just in case, if you have any doubt, we're gonna send you this so you can use forward to other folks. You can call the 213 number, which is in Los Angeles, to find out if this person is real. Thank you. Next, please. And this is the notice of visit. This is very crucial. Each housing unit has a unique code, an ID number. It's a geocode to the housing unit only. With this, we will be able to remove your name from the list to be followed up immediately. It's called being self-counted or self-respondent. Next, please. Again, and when the census workers come to your door and not be able to communicate, sometimes it's Visayan, Ilocano, whatever have you there. And if it's an elderly person who doesn't speak fluent English, this is one thing. It has 62 different languages, and she can pull it out and point. I speak this language, and we're going to try to locate an enumerator who speaks Ilocano or Visayan somewhere nearby and send that person to that housing unit, just in case. Next, please. And these are we have to abide by CDC protocols as well as the local health code. Next, please. Again, I want to reserve some of the time to answer questions that a lot of you might have. So this is it. We have exactly 34 days to get ourselves counted. As you can see that currently we are still using 2010 census data. So it's not only 10 years that we're talking about not having a complete picture of what the community looks like. We're looking at 10, 15, 20, 30 years way down the road. You should see the census is a snapshot in time. Every 10 years, America comes together, have a family picture taken. We need to be in that picture. We belong in that picture. See, that's the only way America knows who has what, needs what. Whether it's housing, affordable housing, healthcare, or even to decide what to stock at the local supermarket. We need the data. So I open up for questions and answers that you may have. And Teresa and I here, we tag team.
Thank you so much, Sonny. We'll have the Q&A after we hear from Mayor Roland Esquivias and Vice Mayor Juslyn Manalo. So Mayor Roland Esquivias was born and raised in Manila, Philippines. He was elected to the Hercules City Council in 2016 and is currently its mayor. The population of Contra Costa is over, sorry, I got lost. It's over 1 million, of which 25% are his constituents. This evening, Mayor Esquivias will give us a snapshot of Filipino Americans in his city in the East Bay and how they promote the 2020 census. Here is Mayor Esquivias.
Thank you, Esther. Actually, I have a PowerPoint also that I can share.
We have it already. We're ready, or is it another one?
Yeah, I have it ready. So probably there you go. Can I have a share access to
Was this the same PowerPoint you sent me?
Yeah, I just sent you another one.
Mayor?
Oh, okay. So, Mayor, what you can do you see a green share screen button on the, so just click on that, click on the share screen button, and then select the PowerPoint presentation you wish to share out.
Okay. All right.
And there would be another button that says share.
All right. Okay.
And then we will all see it.
All right. Okay. So I see the share screen.
All right.
Okay. And then I am just going to go ahead and
share.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Do you see it? Do you see it?
Not yet. Not yet.
Okay. All right. So okay.
But we do have your PowerPoint, Mayor, and when he can run it.
Okay, sure. Awesome.
Would you like me to do that instead?
Yes.
And while I get it ready again, while I get my screens ready, I see Emil has his hand raised. Is there something that you would like to
Yeah,
ask, Emil?
just a quick question of Sonny. Sonny, thank you very much for remembering that we consorted with each other a long time ago. But I'm glad to see you continue to do this. Are things different now under the, how are things challenging this time around under the Trump administration? And
Oh,
Yeah,
so Emil, yes. Go ahead, Esther.
yeah, we have to move that to after Vice
okay,
Mayor Manalo. So we know we get this going as scheduled. Thank
okay.
you.
All right.
Just cue me when you want to change the slide.
All right, so great. So yeah, okay. So this is Hercules census figures 1910 to 2010. You can go to the next slide. All right, and then the next probably. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So okay, so the next,
Would you like me to
Slide.
go to the next slide, Mayor?
yeah, please. Thank you. Okay, so there was okay, you can go to the next slide again. So there are, there is actually a change from 300 in population to 5,000 from 1970 to 1980. And so these are the questions. So why was there a change? So A, the government gave couples incentives to multiply. And then the next slide, please, which is number B, new housing was built. And next slide, please. And Interstate 80 was built. So these are the three questions, answering the question of why there was a change from a population of 300 plus to 5,000. And then next slide, please. So from 1980 to 1990, there was another, another change. It became like I think from 5,000 to 24,000 that time. It's next slide, please. So what happened between 1980 and 1990? So basically there was a change in population. And I think, okay, next slide, please. Okay. While there is an upward movement of, but it doesn't show the figures though. Next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, in 1980, there was the increase was 23 times the 1970, and there was an upward change. And of course, from 2010 to 2020, next slide, please. Okay, so this is now our population, 26,276. So the next slide, please. So so basically, I would say that probably because of housing availability and affordability, that's why there was really an upsurge of number of people who moved into our city of Hercules. Next slide, please. So what can we do? So I would suggest, I would say that what can we do to have our response rate, higher? And I suggest that you have to talk to your family. Next slide, please. And also to your friends, and tell them to, do a to go to my2020census.gov and just, register there and answer all these questions that are in that website. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
That is the end.
Oh, okay. So basically, you got the okay, because I have.
Do you have a different deck?
Yeah,
Mayor?
I do. Okay, so I think okay. Okay. Now I can go up here. Oh, wonderful. Okay. So yeah. So
If you want to share your deck.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would go ahead and do this. So yeah, as you can see, from 1910 2010, there was like, from 5,000 to 24,000. So on the next slide, from 1910 to 2010, there was like 252. And then as I was saying earlier, there was an increase of 5,963 in population. And so what happened in Hercules between 1970 and 1980, and so these questions of like the government gave cops incentives to multiply, new housing was built, Interstate 80 was built. These are kind of like questions to add humor and, in what really happened between 1910 to 2010. And this is it. It's like, there's, and I believe because of, housing, even in our, in our village parkway, which is, condominiums and townhouses, which was built during the 1980s. So that, that really would really explain why, the increase in our population happened in that decade.
Mayor, can I interject something? Would you know how many Filipino families are in your city, and when was the influx of Filipinos to Hercules?
Well, actually, it started way back in, in the 70s. A lot of Filipinos moved here in Hercules, and they were choosing between Vallejo and Hercules. And so a lot of them actually chose Hercules. So I would say, okay, our demographics right now, we have like 48 Asians, and 35% of that Asian demographics are Filipinos.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but to give you the number of household, I wouldn't be able to give that. And as you can see here, the population by decade, it's, we're now up to 24,000 in 2010. But now, in fact, this is our, our population right now, 26,500. And the response rate is 72.4%. In USA, nationally, it's 64.6%. The response rate in California is 66.7%. And then in Contra Costa County, it's 75%. And then Hercules is at 72.4%. So we're doing pretty good in our, response to the census. And these rates include responses from people who completed their census questionnaire either online, by phone, or by mail. And so what can we do to help everyone be counted? So as I said earlier, we have to talk to our friends, our neighbors. And of course, we can start with our own families. It's quick and easy. The 2020 census questionnaire will take about 10 minutes to complete. It is safe, secure, and confidential, and your information and privacy are really protected. So go to my2020census.gov to register and be counted. And I would suggest that, and really encourage for you to be, asking everyone, in your circle to register and be counted. In fact, tomorrow we're having a meeting because we wanted to do something on next week on the 4th, on September 4th, which is next Friday. It's called Census Awareness Caravan, where we will, start driving and kind of like, making people aware of, Census 2020 and really be counted. So that's another way of, reaching out and making people aware of the importance of Census 2020. And I've been actually even talking to some clubs here in Hercules and some organizations through Zoom meetings, and encouraging everybody to be counted, because it's really, really important, very important, because being counted, it's really directing billions of dollars in federal funds to local communities for public services such as health, education, and transportation. And we really need to get a slice of that pie, if you may. so that we can really have, these public services funding accessible, being accessed and, being utilized for everybody's well-being in our communities. And I think
Thank
by
you.
yeah, and yeah, I think I'll end up my presentation in that note. Thank you so much, Esther.
Thank you so much, Mayor Esquivias. And so before we go to Vice Mayor Juslyn Manalo, we'll show some statistics which we got from the American communities, also from the Census Bureau. So Wennie, in 2018, the Filipino Americans constitute the second largest population of Asian Americans and the largest Asian population in California. So Filipino Americans can be found mostly in the Western United States. About 48% of them live in California. And so I can imagine why the consulate is overwhelmed by so many Filipinos. And the US is the to-go place, I guess, for overseas Filipinos because, again, 48% of Filipinos go overseas to America. And that, did you know that in 2018 as well, I'm sorry, 48% of Filipino Asian Americans, Wennie, we go to the next slide. 48% of Filipino Americans married non-Asians, and 21.8% of Philams are multiracial, second among Asian Americans. And depending on parentage, multiracial Philams identify themselves as Mestizo, Chinoy, Black Capino, and Mexicano. So there you go, a short tidbit. And now we go to our next speaker is Vice Mayor Juslyn Manalo of Daly City, California. In 2017, she became the first Filipina mayor of Daly City, which has a population of 108,000. It is the largest city with a major Asian population in mainland USA. And 33.2% of them are Filipinos. Only 15% are Chinese. And for the whole of San Mateo County, with a population of 727,209, close to 10% are Filipinos. Thus, you find a lot of Filipino restaurants, Sonny, in San Mateo County. So without further ado, here's Vice Mayor Juslyn Manalo.
Thank you so much for having me, the Filipino American Press Club, and really on this important topic of the census for our communities. With the city of Daly City, we've been working very closely with the San Mateo Census Committee with the county to ensure that there are people filling out their censuses, the census forms. On a grassroots level, what's really important, I think, in our community is when they see trusted messengers or organizations that they know. And so what we've done in the past with the Filipino Bayanihan Resource Center, PBRC partnered with the Filipino American Democratic Club of San Mateo County and Census 2020 when there was definitely food insecurity that still exists today, giving out hot meals on Mother's Day and Father's Day. But at that very same time, we provided census materials to the community. We know that extra push around kind of that connection and outreach to community members is very important. And, if we imagine how much dollars could be lost when just one person does not fill out the census form or is not counted. I mean, $10,000 times, if there's 2 or 3, then that's $30,000. And, exponentially, these are dollars that are being lost for education, health, and even congressional seats could be lost if we're not counted, right? And so I think some of the issues that were talked about earlier today that Sonny had touched upon is, really some people not feeling secure or are fearful that, they don't want to fill out the forms if they are undocumented. But what we need to reiterate over and over to our community members, that it is a secure process and that it's important that we do fill this out, because many of our students go to these schools. Many of our community members utilize, hospitals in our community, and without filling it out, it's detrimental actually, because our funding and resources will be limited to what the actual count and numbers will be, right, or should be. And so, as mentioned earlier, the current numbers in Daly City is about, 106 to 8,000, 106 to 808,000 in population. And one fact is that actually Daly City is the largest city in population in the county of San Mateo, with 32% of individuals of Filipino descent, right? And so how is this so important? We need to ensure that our kababayans, fill out the form, understand that there is now a deadline of September 30th. And the timing is so important. Actually, our current numbers and response rate is 73.6%. In the city of Daly City, but that does not mean we will stop there. Even this Saturday, we will be doing a caravan starting from PBRC. Then we will be going to Ceremony and really going to an area called Westlake. For those of you who are watching, we're actually multi-units of apartment buildings is where most of the lowest counts are happening. And so we are going to take that extra step to do visibility and also stay at, the farmers market in Ceremony, and also the outdoor markets there to remind people, and in the same manner, sign people up on the spot if needed. I think as public leaders and elected officials, I think one thing that we could do is keep promoting this on our social media as time gets close to the deadline. I think we can share it, remind people exactly as what was mentioned earlier, just keep reminding people how important this is for our communities. And I think, we are on right now Zoom, Facebook. I think we all know those mediums very well. And that's definitely another way to share with our communities. I think that grassroots and coordination is so important, that even on Friday, the community in San Francisco will be holding a caravan starting from the Bayanihan Equity Center all the way around to the Excelsior. And so when that happens in San Francisco, the baton will be passed on to San Mateo County. And it's really this energy around ensuring that our communities are counted. And so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor Juslyn Manalo. And to segue to what she has said on the importance of being counted, and so that the communities get the federal funding, we have a list of why the census matters. So, as you said, as it was mentioned by Mr. Lay and Mayor Esquivias and Vice Mayor Juslyn Manalo, the census really helps determine the allocation of funds, federal funds, to the states and communities each year. It determines the number of seats in Congress, and support for public schools, rural areas, wildfire preparation, housing, and support for older adults. These are all very important to the community. Public works, repairs of our highways, grants for public transportation and schools. And so it also provides funding for firefighters and public servants, for families in need, and so many more important benefits for each individual and communities. So, we have the means to improve. We have the means to improve our community and our lives. Kaya magpalista na. The 2010 census confirmed that the Filipino Americans had grown to become the largest Asian American population in California, totaling 1.5 million. However, it has been noticed that Filipinos have a residential invisibility compared to other Asian Americans. So let's change that. Let's be more proactive and be visible. So we go to our last agenda before the question and answer portion. Please do relay these messages to your media and to your news outlets in social media, tweets, Facebook, and all that. So now we give Wennie for the Q&A portion of the Kapihan. So Emil, if you're still there, do you have a question for Sonny Lay?
Where's Guillermo? I think
he left.
He may have left, but if I can remember, Mr. Lay, his question was, was it COVID or the election impacting?
I think his question was, what are the difficulties now of undertaking the census in this climate right now under President Trump?
Is that directed at the Census Bureau?
Yes.
Okay. Teresa, you want to take that? We've been asked these questions many times. Please take it.
One of the difficulties that we've come across, and Vice Mayor Manalo had touched upon it, for an example, are residents who are hesitant to fully count those that are residing in their particular dwelling. And for numerous reasons, as you can imagine, whether it be their immigration status, their criminal status, or for whatever reason, they hesitate in terms of being forthcoming with that information. Politically, we've been gotten feedback about the political climate, but given that the Census Bureau cannot comment on that, Sonny, you may want to take that on that one. I know that is some of the things that I've been hearing in terms of slight mistrust about where this information is going and how secure it really is.
The census has always been a challenge to count new immigrants, period. You have to understand the context that a lot of us came from not very nice governments. I came from a communist nation. And so the census was used for a different purpose, to round up young men for the battles. Nepal, Bhutan to be exact, in 1992 did its own census in order to find out how many Nepalese lived in Bhutan and kick them out. The same thing had been done in Rwanda, Burundi, and many other countries. Census was misused. So in America, it's a different story. And yes, immigration climate hasn't been helpful for the census. But when we go to the local levels, it's the complexity of our communities. So you know that when immigrants and refugees, when we are displaced by high, skyrocketing rents, we cannot take up and leave and go to Nebraska and Wyoming. By the way, the Consul General, I have met Filipinos in Nome, in Kosovo, 75 miles inside the Arctic Circle. In 2010 census, I covered that part of Alaska. I met Filipinos way up there, very close to where Santa is from. And so Filipinos are everywhere. You're right. There should be a consulate in Anchorage or even in Nome, for that matter. Anyway, so the point is that the complexity of the immigrant communities and those from the Philippines and Korea and China and Vietnam, and mind you that Filipinos have a relatively high shares of undocumented residents. So the number of undocumented residents in the US, Asians make up 16% of those numbers. And the top 5 groups are Indians, Chinese, Filipino, Korean, and Vietnamese. We made up the most undocumented residents in the US among Asian groups. Filipinos and Vietnamese are about the same numbers. And so when you have that, it creates a sense of fear in the community. And you know how we go to the restaurant, we go to barber shop, and we talk among each other. You hear through the grapevine that so-and-so is undocumented, and it creates a sense of fear. So not only one person not counted, but could be multiple other individuals have been infected by that fear. The same thing, like, you know, if you have an individual, and you know that our communities have a relatively high percentage of young men who have been involved with the criminal justice system. And currently there are about 10,000 Southeast Asian with deportation orders. The same thing, we don't talk about it, but there's Koreans, there are Chinese, there are Indians, and the Vietnamese with deportation orders. And a lot of these individuals are adults with wives, with children, with grandchildren, with businesses. And so if they have a deportation order hanging over their head, that creates a sense of fear among their circles. And so when Vice Mayor Manalo, that's when we say, when you look at the numbers of those being counted on a daily basis, that is based on the total housing units that are accessible and known to the Census Bureau. By the end of the census, by September 30th, 2020, the Census Bureau will have accounted for 100% of the households that are known to us. But those are not the ones that make up the undercount or the uncount. The uncount and undercount are the unknown numbers. The new family members in the households that came over since 2000 and 2010 census. And the newlyweds, the new family members, sons, son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, those individuals, we need to account for them. And the little ones who have been born since the last census, we need to account for those ones. And the grandmas and the grandpas who had overstayed a visa, we need to count those individuals as well. And we may have taken a deadbeat brother who's now in the basement, who got kicked out of his wife's house. We need to count him too, because he's a homeless person to the Census Bureau. And he may not be part of the family. When you get that census form, you think of your immediate family members. You may not think of the border of the person who rents out your basement, your garage. Even though he or she may not be related to you, that person should be counted under the same roof. If you don't feel comfortable counting that person on your census form, then you encourage that person to get online and get him or herself counted. So those individuals are the ones that are going to be missed, not those who live at 123 Main Street. The Census Bureau has information for the person who lives at 123 Main Street, but not 123.5 Main Street. We don't have that address.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Lay. You've stressed very eloquently why we need to get the undercounted counted. But Joe, I see your hand raised. If I can just ask this one question, Mr. Lay and Teresa, can you give us, what assurance can you give to those who are fearful to be counted because of the situations or conditions that you have stated? What can we tell them? What assurance can we tell them that it's safe to be counted?
You want to take it, Teresa? Okay, so the census is one of those, one thing that we cannot avoid, the elephant in the room, is that we are still part of the federal government. And the occupant in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, he's our boss at the end of the day. And we cannot do anything about it. We work for the federal government. But the Census Bureau is an independent data collection agency. And in fact, it conducts hundreds of surveys year-round throughout the decade. No questions asked. Nobody ever asked for the integrity of our census. And another thing is the Census Bureau is the preeminent collection agency. In fact, we consult for nearly 300 countries around the world on how to capture census data. We have mastered how to do it and how to keep it safe. We're using the highest, the latest technology to keep safe your data. And another thing is that you have to look at the data that we collect. Your Uber driver has more information on you than we do. The pizza delivery person has more information on you than the Census Bureau does. What does the pizza delivery person has? Your name, your address, and your account for your debit card or your MasterCard or Visa card number. The Census Bureau doesn't have any of that. And so when we collect data, what comes out is just 0 and 1. There's no, you cannot trace census data back to the individual that submitted the data. In fact, you go online right now, you can get a lot of more information from outside the Census Bureau than the Census Bureau itself. You go to Zillow, you can see who's had sold a house recently. You can see the actual names. The Census Bureau doesn't have that kind of information, okay? And the Census Bureau, the only time when the data is available is 72 years after. I don't know if I'll be around to see my own census data 72 years from now. So in that sense, what the Bureau collects is very innocuous, but what the data does is amazing. Like so much of the data undergirds our governments, our democratic system, and what we do on a daily basis, especially those of us who need data to get grants from the foundations, from the cities, from the counties, for health services, for child care, for daycare, all those services. Without census data, we cannot get grants. When we get a grant application that asks us how many people we serve, and we're gonna say, according to the Census Bureau, there were how many Filipinos in Daly City? According to the Census Bureau. So without that, you're not gonna be able to get grants. And so to say that, yes, we can only promise so far. If people don't want to believe anymore, then there's nothing you can do. We can go to what it does, what census data do for the community and for the individuals themselves.
Thank you very much. Thank
Also,
you.
I wanted,
Mr.
may I
Young.
add, that all Census Bureau employees are sworn employees. We go through extensive training as well as take an oath to keep all your information confidential. We can go to jail if we break that.
For our entire lives, for our entire lives.
Okay,
So
thank you. Thank you very much. Joe, you had a question?
I just wanted to ask, actually I have a question for Teresa or Sonny and to the mayor and vice mayor. First to Sonny and Teresa. If a household is unsure whether they had filled out already a census, is there a way of checking if that household has already filled out a census application or census information?
Right. We often say that overcounting is a good problem to have. Yeah. Undercounting is a problem we cannot afford. Yeah. So anytime you have doubt that whether you have counted or not, you have counted yourself or not, do it again. Yeah. The Census Bureau at the back end, we can figure out who has been counted, who hasn't been. We look at the birth dates, we look at the ages, we look at your last names, middle names, and we look at the address and your ethnic backgrounds. That's how we can vet who has been who has submitted and who hasn't. What we don't want is that anybody say, I think I've been counted by mom already, so I'm all good. Don't. Get online, get yourself counted. If you have doubt anytime, you have 34 days to do that. Just 42 days, 34 days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're opening the floor up for...
Sorry for Mayor Esquivias and Vice Mayor Manalo. Do you, for your communities, since you have a lot of Filipinos living in your cities, do you see an uptrend of Filipinos? Do you see a trend of more Filipinos transferring to your communities or setting roots in your communities?
You're on mute.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're muted.
Thank you, Esther. Yeah, actually, I think there is, an uptrend of Filipinos moving to my city. Number one, it's very affordable. Number two, it's a beautiful city. That's why we have, Filipinos moving here in Hercules. And then number three, aside from affordability and of course, availability of, houses here, I think it's becoming really, a prime destination here in the Bay Area because our waterfront is being, built, and then we have the blessing of the JPA cattle corridor for being blessed with being blessed as a candidate train station. So probably we're going to have a train stop here in 2 to 3 years time, and of course WITA, which is the Water Enforcement Transportation Authority, the agency that oversees ferries in the Bay Area, loves our city so much. And so probably I'm saying this, that probably between 7 to 10 years, we're going to have the ferry here. So yeah, it's going to be probably another South Salida or another Tiburon,
Wow.
in this part of the Bay. It's such a beautiful, development that's happening here in our city. So I just cut the ribbon for the exchange, which is the first, block that was completed. And so we are now seeing blocks MPNO, being built probably at the last quarter of this year. So yeah, so that's why I think there is really a lot of Filipinos moving into this city. It's because of affordability, availability, and of course being set up as another prime destination in the Bay Area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor, would you like to answer that question?
Sure, thank you. So, as immigrant communities, the Filipino American community, we've always had extended family. So if we continue to see, the continuity of immigration and even folks coming over from the Philippines and they have family in Daly City, you'll see a continuous rise in that respect, right? Because that's how we are as a community, where it's not necessarily only a nuclear family, it's an extended family where our aunts and uncles, and whether or not that's always just how we've been, where we take care of our family, and if they need to start, that's where they start, and maybe they stay in Daly City, or maybe they move on. But that would be one of the particular, I think, situations if we see that continuity. And then also, it's been talked about, it's not something new, but the rise of just housing in the Bay Area has been hard for young professionals like myself to even afford a home, right? And so what we do see is there has been more not a college student anymore, but college students coming back and living with their parents. And that, in that respect, that would also probably increase the count of number, since Daly City is adjacent to San Francisco, close to jobs, and really around the tech sector, right? And so I would say that would be another factor down the line if we were to see the uptick in that respect. And also, like myself, I have a growing family. And so I would say, a lot of folks my age that have continued to reside in Daly City are now having children, and we know that will be counted as well. And I am happy to say that I will be expecting, and so in that way, that would be another reason for the uptick if there's other folks like myself that will be growing their families. So.
Well, congratulations, congratulations. Yes, Esther, but I think Esther before you, June had raised his hand earlier.
Okay.
You are?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'd like to know from the speakers, how much has the pandemic really impacted the gathering of data for Census 2020? Are you on schedule? And how confident are you that you will meet your target by September 30?
So let's see. Okay. We will meet the target on September 30th. And so it's not, there's a concern from the community that not having, not everyone is able to participate in the census. It's not so much of the counting itself. As I was saying, the Census Bureau has the capacity to finish following up with our housing units. As you can see, we nearly completion already. And in fact, some of the flatland areas in San Francisco, we are already finished on knocking on those doors. So for us, from the community standpoint, if you look into the Census Bureau's numbers, the Bureau will have met its target. It has the capacity, it has the means, it has the money. And in fact, the Bureau has over $1 billion sitting around for rainy day just to do that. And we can ramp up the capacity to do that. But for us, we shouldn't be fixated on what the deadline is or what the political climate is. We should be focusing on the fact that we have only 34 days left to get everyone counted. So regardless of where you live and how you get to this country, you need to be counted. And this message should go out. So if we keep getting hung up or stuck with who's in the White House, then we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to kick up further that sense of fear that, oh my God, we're going to run out of time and that the Census Bureau is not going to count you. The question is that how are you going to get yourself counted at this point? How are we going to help each other get counted at this point? And we are in the point where this is retail counting. So I would encourage that you pick up the phone and call up your friends and mechanics and nail salon workers or barbers and hairstylists. Have you been counted? If you have not, here is how I'm going to help you. I'm going to get online, my 2020 census, and these are the questions that the Bureau asks you. If you're comfortable doing that, now I'm going to help you get yourself counted. There's no point in belaboring the political climate or the COVID-19. In fact, we have only 34 days. So COVID-19 is the past now. We need to get to the finish line. And I speak as both a community member and as a Census Bureau employee. And Census Bureau employee, this is my third census, that I know I'm very confident in our ability to finish on time. And in fact, we are almost there. We are that good, that fast. With the technology, it's a lot faster than the olden days when we had to ask questions and write and wrote it in pencil. That takes a longer, and we have to go back to the office and scan them in and send them in. So that takes longer. Now it's right away. So in that sense, we have the means, the technology to finish the job on time. The question is, those we don't know that have moved into the communities in the past 10 years, will they get counted? That's the question we should ask. The new members, newly borns, newlyweds, and some might have mixed status. That is our biggest concern at this point.
Thank you, Sonny. May I have a question, Miss Wennie? I can't hear you.
I think we have time for one more question, Boots. Go ahead.
So if a U.S. resident is left stranded outside of the country due to the pandemic before and after April 1st, as I think many are, should they still fill up the census form, and is there a time or date limitation on how many days or months a person would have stayed in a residence before they are legitimately counted?
While you're traveling, it doesn't matter. It's traveling for business and for vacation, then you still should be counted in the US. The problem for those who stranded abroad, they cannot access the census website at all. You cannot access the census website to get yourself counted. If you have family members in this country, I would encourage those in this country to count those who are stranded in the Philippines or the Marianas or Guam. So you need to encourage family members who are still here to count those who are abroad. The criteria we have is that you must live and sleep in America 6 months and 1 second. It doesn't matter what your status is. If you live the majority and sleep majority of the time in the US, you are counted here. The rationale is that while you sleep here and while you eat here, you use up the services, whether it's the roads, electricity, even the plumbing. When you flush the toilets, use up our service, and that has to be paid for. And that's the rationale is why if you sleep and eat in the USA, you should be counted in the USA. That's it.
So if less than 6 months, you can't be counted?
No. If you live and sleep in the US less than 6 months, I'm not supposed to say anything about that.
But
What's me to talk about that?
Mr. Lay, it's in the US, right? Not
Yes.
in a particular city or a county. So
In the US.
one
yes.
county to another.
It
Okay.
doesn't matter in the US.
Okay, thank you. Rudy, yes, I see you waving and I see your raised hand. Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
please.
My question is for Sonny. What do you do in the case of the senior population that has no access to computers,
Right.
has no access to any kind of information that the census takers and the census personnel are putting out there? How do
Right.
they get counted?
So there's two ways of seniors being counted. And so they have received the census questionnaire by mail in the traditional and olden ways. In the olden days, they would fill out the census and mail it back. Because of COVID-19, because of postage stamps, and because people right now stuck in place, they may not get counted. So the census workers would be coming to them. But COVID-19, going back to the questions about COVID-19, how it has impacted the census, is that a lot of senior houses, housing developments, for fear of census workers bringing in COVID-19, they close the door to us. And so that poses another challenge. And so at this point, a lot of community groups and churches are trying to access these seniors right now. And a lot of the seniors have been getting census help via those who bring food to them. And hopefully they're gonna get counted that way. But what we call hard to count communities or groups would be seniors, those families with young kids, renters, new immigrants, and limited English speakers. Those are the very hard to count communities in general, with or without the pandemic, or with or without whoever is in the White House.
Thank you.
So that's basically the flow in all this, because you have a situation where a lot of Filipinos, they don't have access to computers, don't have access to any kind of information. They're the ones that are not getting counted, and I
Right.
suspect there's a whole bunch of them that that are not being counted. When I assumed the position of executive director of the West Bay, which is one of the oldest and largest
Right.
Filipino nonprofit, I had access to the drawers that contained all the census data beginning in 1960 when the census was first started. And from 1960, every 10 years, the Philippine population in San Francisco were growing by 10,000 Filipinos. Every 10 years, there'll be 10,000 Filipinos. So by the year 2000, there were 42,800 Filipinos. And then in 2010, it nosedived to around 36,000. And I'll be really surprised now to find out what is the population of San Francisco, given the exodus of the Filipinos in the Southern Market in the Tenderloin, in other areas, because of the high rent and the things that are happening with the community. So if a lot of these Filipinos that are living in senior houses in basements and other areas in San Francisco are not being counted, that to me is a very, very serious problem with the census, don't you think?
Teresa can talk about more about some of the organizations in Suffolk Market that we've been working with and trying to reach out to folks.
I do know that one of the things, like with the groups like the service providers, Filipino service providers, that they have made an effort in order to get translation, as well as when they either pick up their food or when their healthcare services are in need, they are being reached out to. The Luisa at the Bayanihan Community Center on Mission, I believe, she has been instrumental in trying to even make sure that we get in, like I was thanking the Consul General and getting in the Consulate. The other, I have to say, the other blessing in being in this forum and watching, having Mayor Chavez as well as Vice Mayor Manalo on, is actually the Filipino elected officials that are in the Bay Area. They have been instrumental in trying to at least be the trusted voice, especially with seniors, that say that we are safe in terms of the information, that their information is safe, and they give us the inroads into the communities. I have to say that I can speak of the city of Daly City, who's been their instrumental in terms of even helping us get training sites for our new census workers. San Mateo County Complete Count Committee is very aware of the Filipino population in the northern part of their county. Mayor, I am thrilled to hear that you're having caravans in Hercules. I lived in Rodeo and went to school in John Swett High School, so I'm very familiar with the area, and you guys still have my favorite bakery in Sunflower. And so that, I know that is being done. We have elected officials in Alameda as well as in Union City. So we have also devised a Bay Area Complete Count Committee, Bay Area Filipino Complete Count Committee. And that is a group of the service providers as well as outreach workers that have convened and talked about the different ways that they're doing. I do know that they have adapted the social media, which I'm not that great at, but they have taken that and mimic some of the ways that, in the Philippines, how they are to message their Filipino community. So that's what I take a lot of pride of in the San Francisco Bay Area and our community, is that, we know who our elected officials are, as well as our consulate, and they are very proactive in terms of helping this effort. So I thank them. Thank you very much.
So, Wennie, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, it's like my mic is off and on. So I think we are at time, Esther. So let me turn it over to you for your closing remarks.
Okay, so on behalf of Wennie and myself, and the officers and board members of the Philippine American Press Club USA, we thank our panelists, attendees, and everyone in this evening's forum. Maraming salamat po. Until we meet again in our next Kapihan next month for the voter education and workshop on how to be involved in your community and embark on a public service career, like Mayor Juslyn Manalo, Vice Mayor Juslyn Manalo, and Mayor Roland Esquivias. So thank you very much. Magandang gabi. Good evening.
Salamat.
Thank you, Winnie. Thank you, Esther. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.